So joining me now is one of Dillon's teammates, neighbours, clubmen, friends, John O'Keefe. John, you're very welcome. A little bit about Dillon. You know, you saw Dillon growing up from a young age, you coached him underage, and you played with him.
Yeah, thanks John, delighted to be here. Yeah, I suppose Dillon is down the road from me, a real Rossmore man, so I always was a big fan of him from an early age. He went to Ballock National School, and I used to come home on a Thursday night to coach on a Friday. I used to do the 3 primary schools, and Dillon was in Ballock. I just remember even from that young age, he stood out, and no matter how difficult I made a drill or a game, Dillon would be looking up at me saying, is that all you have, like, you know? So he was just a joy, and that continued the whole way up along. He was a star performer, and I always just knew that he was going to make it to the very top. But he was always such a nice way about him, even to some of the weaker kids inside in the primary schools. Dillon always made him feel important and tried to get him involved in every game he played. That was just his nature. And
he was really, you know, he was driven, wasn't he? You know, he had a kind of a focus about him that he wanted to be the best that he could be for himself, for his club, you know, and ultimately then for his county.
It's very, very much so individually driven, yeah. But he knew again that there was 15 players on the pitch, and he knew as good as he could be, he knew he needed to drive on his teammates as well. But certainly you couldn't ask for a better trainer. You know, he came to the pitch all the time ready to train and give 100%, and that continued on to match day. It just came so naturally to him then. And then, as you said, Jonathan, I suppose that was the ultimate step for him then, was to put on the blue and gold jersey and perform to that level he did. And I suppose we saw that in a blue and gold jersey last year.
While he was, you know, really focused, really driven, really professional in his approach, he was also a nice guy. He was a funny guy. He was a messer. And, you know, I think, you know, I got to know Dillon a small little bit through his involvement with Tipperary, and you know, he always had a word, he always had a smile. Even myself with my own little fella at training or whatever, pat on the head, that kind of always a welcome. And you know, that was the Dillon, like, wasn't it? He was always smiling.
Always smiling. And even when he got in with Tipperary, I just remember he was always still around the pitch, like, and the commitment those boys give is phenomenal. So I just can't believe how often we see him down around the pitch, and he mightn't be togged off with us, but he'd be there. And for our younger players to see Dillon down around the pitch was huge as well. As you said then, there was always time for everybody, whether it be a smile or a pat in the back or even a few pucks. He was a great man to have a few pucks with the younger lads. And then he had that messer side to him as well, you know, which was a great little personality trait in him, and just always a joy to be around, you know. But then he could just switch it on, and he was in game mode or training mode. And as you said, that individual drive that he had to perform to the highest level was always within him.
If we looked in, I suppose, now at the Dillon Quirke Foundation, set up in his honour, set up to, you know, help others, to screen young boys, young girls and adults as well for sudden adult death syndrome. It's a real, I suppose, legacy for Dillon, and it's something that, you know, I'm sure you're really proud of as his teammate, as his friend, but ultimately as a parish in Clonarty Rossmore.
Hugely, and I know we've decided to name the club grounds after Dillon as well, but this, I think, is probably even bigger, to be honest with you, John, this foundation. Dan and Hazel, Shannon and Kelly obviously are driving it, but from a club and from a county and from a whole GA, I suppose, community, I just love to see it being driven as much as we possibly can. Like, I was playing that evening inside in Simple Stadium when Dillon dropped, and I just, if we can stop that happening to any player out there, you know, and if that screening, if this foundation gets going and gets where it needs to get to, it'll be of huge benefit if we can save somebody's lives, you know, because I think it's from the age of 12 up, boys and girls. It's a brilliant opportunity, and you know, if it does highlight something that isn't functioning correctly with somebody, and can save a life, I mean, it's worth every penny. So from that point of view, yeah, like, I know the inter-county scene probably are getting that maybe, so it certainly is from my point of view. I suppose I was lucky enough to play for Tipperary and for my club, but I'm back with my club now. I see the benefit it would have from players, male and female, from the age of 12 up, right up to adult players.
And of course, while the screening is going to be fantastic, there's always a cost involved, and that's why we're here to talk about the Tipperary versus Kilkenny Senior Hurling Challenge on Sunday, January the 19th in FBD Simple Stadium. I'm sure you're really urging people to come along, to support it and get involved and get behind the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as as a cracker of a game, which it'll always be between Tipp and Kilkenny, the cause is huge, you know. So even if you can't get to the game, I'd be encouraging people to, you know, buy their online ticket, buy the programme online. It can be streamed as well, so you know they can give back in some little way if you can't get to the game. But we're trying to make this a huge starting point for the foundation, and it's already you know really gaining pace. But this is really the one we're targeting now. So I'd be encouraging everybody to get to Simple Stadium on Sunday the 19th and really support this foundation.
And as John has said, if you can't get to FBD Simple Stadium on the day, you can log on to the Tipperary GA website or the Dillon Quirke Foundation website. You can buy your non-attendance ticket or you can buy your streaming pass. And by doing that, you will also be supporting this wonderful fundraiser, and we encourage you strongly to do so. And every euro that you donate will go to the Dillon Quirke Foundation and help boys, girls, men and women throughout the country, and hopefully to reduce, as we said, the incidence of sudden adult death syndrome. John O'Keefe, Clonolty Rossmore, former Tipperary hurler, thank you very, very much for joining us.